Hey guys, this is Mel, and I'm back to talk about Legends of Tomorrow. 3 episodes, specifically 505, titled Mortal Kombat, which premiered February 25th, 2020. 506, titled Mr. Parker's Cul-De-Sac, which premiered March 10th, 2020. And then 507, titled Romeo v. Juliet, Dawn of Justness, which premiered March 17th, 2020. So huge spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the 3 episodes already, please go do so first and then come back and see what I have to say about the 3 episodes. For me, I know this is a little late than I would normally do it, but because we are currently in a quarantine pandemic, I do have the time. I also don't have classes at the moment, and my work is shut down, so I have this time now. So I just over the last 2 days, I watched these 3 episodes, in particular through Rogers On Demand, thankfully. So I'll be talking about those because they're strictly fresh in my head still. I will mention 502, 3, and 4 just briefly in regards to like timeline and encores featured, but otherwise the rest of the video is just going to be 5, 6, and 7. And the reason they're titled 5, 6, 7, even though the production codes, no, those are the same production codes, but just because, again, Crisis, I've labeled it as 5500 as opposed to 501. Even though Crisis was shot as 508, so that shouldn't be an issue. So I am recording on April 7th, 2020. I'll try to do this in 30 minutes since we are covering 3 different episodes in detail. But yeah, so let's start this clock and let's begin with with the episode. So timeline wise for Legends, as you know, I don't do it in time for the characters because that's a little harder for a time traveling show, but I do it in times of where they actually go visit in the timeline. So with 502, we got Los Angeles in 1947, as well as Washington, D.C. in 2044, specifically the Tarazi home. This is the first time we actually go and see Bayrod's family and the current state. They're all there, they're all present, so there's that. 503, we have it featured in Central City. We have it specifically in June of 1989, and then in June, I'm assuming it's June, but it's in 2004. Specifically because 1989 was when the inciting incident, I guess you could say, first started, and then 2004 is when the encore arrived. And the encore inciting incident was 15 years previously. So there's that. 504, it took place in France of, I think it's 1793. I mixed up the date there. It's up on screen though. So there's that. Also, we go to New York City, 2044, to Zari's and Bayrod's future. So there's that. Now with 505, we go to Hong Kong of 1997. And then in 506, we kind of see a jump. I don't know how to explain this, but it's also taking place in their present day, so 2020. But also we flash back to the season 3 finale, which took place in Salvation, which I don't remember in what particular part of it. It was like 18 something. I'll put it up on screen as well. But it was during the Legends trip in 2018 that they went to because of the whole Bebo versus Mollis fight showdown, and you'll see why in a moment. And then with 507, we go to London of 1594. So there's that. Now let's talk about the villains, or the encores as they're calling it. So the encores are the resurrected souls from hell who are brought back to cause more chaos and corruption. So 502, we get Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. 503, we get the serial killer known as the Prom Night Slasher, originally thought to be Freddie Myers, when it was actually revealed that it was actually his mom, Kathy, who was the Prom Night Slasher. So in the original timeline, Freddie Myers was convicted as the killer, and he died in the execution chair in 2004. Shortly afterwards, his mom died from a heart attack because she saw her son being killed, and then shortly afterward, her as the encore came back. So the Legends thought that since it was Freddie Myers, they went to June 1984 when the original killings happened and tried to change the moment that could have turned Freddie into a killer. And then it was when they were doing that, they found out, no, it was actually his mom. So when she was recaptured, it changed the whole course of yeah, so it's like 1989 was when the killings actually happened. 2004 is when when the Encore actually died after sentencing. So there's that. I went too long into that, but I needed to clarify that. 504 is the Encore is Marie Antoinette. She's actually they address the fact that it's Nora's doppelganger. They don't really address whether or not she's actually genetically connected to Marie Antoinette or not. But it is Courtney Ford, right? Yeah, it is Courtney Ford that's still playing Marie Antoinette. I was about to say Kelly Klein, but that's a character that she plays on Supernatural. That's not the actual. That's not her name. So yeah. So there's that. Now 505. Let's start with that. We have the Encore being Genghis Khan. He revealed that he was entombed in his grave for 700 years, I believe. And it was only recently for him in 1997 that he was able to dig himself out. So that would explain how he was able to still be alive. And so that's something. That also kind of proves that they don't really need to eat in order to survive. Although I do have a question now, because of the terms of their existence to be staying on Earth as Encores, if he was entombed for 700 years, how did he not get recalled back to hell? Because during that entombment, he wouldn't have been able to cause corruption and chaos because he would have not been interacting with anybody. So how is he still able to continue on his, I guess, digging himself out of it if he was not, right? Like that just occurred to me. I'll further elaborate on that later on. But 506, the Encore ended up being Damien Dark. So again, that's why we went back to the whole Beebo versus Mollis moment, because that was when Damien Dark allowed Mollis to possess him, and then that fight ensured, and then they died. So Damien Dark died as a demon. He went to hell. So there's that. Although he didn't look any differently when he came back, he still looked like the same as usual. I thought he would have looked a little bit different because he died when Mollis was in. But anyways. And then actually 507 did not have an encore or a villain of any sort. This episode was pretty much the Legends trying to get something, and then it was their own hijinks that allowed for things to go wrong. It wasn't because of a particular encore was standing in their way. So that was something to take part in as well. All right, so rest of this point forward, I'm only going to talk about 5, 6, and 7. Episode 5, 6, and 7. So storyline-wise for episode 505, I picked up on two different ones. First one being what was happening in Hong Kong in 1997. And then the second one was dealing with Constantine being cursed. Or I guess you could say timeline-wise, it split between that and 2020. Because Constantine was finding himself in the terminal stages of lung cancer a lot sooner than he was supposed to, due to Astra getting the coin maker to kind of turn his coin to like the very end of its line. So he's trying to deal with that and trying to find a magical way to get out of dying of premature cancer. So there's that. 506's storyline, I had 4 of them. They do all connect with each other, but you can kind of pinpoint specific points for it. First one being Daddy Dearest returns, which leads to Nora lying about her life in order to impress her father, which leads to second storyline, which is Pippa's wish, which ends up her wishing all the Legends members, plus Damien Dark, to be inside the television show that she was stuck watching the whole day, Mr. Parker's Cul-De-Sac. Supposed to be very reminiscent of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So there's that. After all that was said and done, it leads to the third storyline, which is Wedding Bells, where we see Ray and Nora not only accepting the engagement, but also getting married because Damien Dark was there to give his daughter away. So there's that. And then a side storyline was number 4, which is Mick dealing with a Rebecca Silver troll, which turned out to be a blast from his past. So there's that. 507 storyline, picked up on 2 different ones. Again, they're all connected with each other a little bit. First one dealing with the changing of Romeo and Juliet. During their side mission, they run into William Shakespeare, and while trying to retrieve something from him, they end up getting into their own legend snafu, which ultimately gave him the wrong inspiration to how he wrote Romeo and Juliet, in more of like a superhero-esque type of a thing instead of a tragic love story. So now the Legends have tried to find a way to change it back to what Romeo and Juliet was supposed to be. So there's that. And then the second one is the bachelor and bachelorette parties for Ray and Nora. And then also the underlining tone throughout both of them is the fact that Ray and Nora are planning to leave, which I'll talk about right now, or in a moment. But the next part I want to talk about is major reminders, so overall story arcs and stuff. So if anything, if you were not to watch the episode, if there's anything you needed to take away from the episode in particular in order to not be lost in any episodes that came afterwards, this is the section you should pay attention to, or I think you should pay attention to. But there's that. So 505, it was revealed by Charlie that she is actually on one of the three fates. And she is the one that stole the Loom of Fate from her sisters, broke it apart, and then scattered its pieces across the multiverse. But because of Crisis, and there's no multiverse anymore, all those pieces are now back on one Earth. So she's been running for 1,000 years after scattering the Loom, in hopes that her sisters don't find it, because the Loom was the source of their power, and also because that was kind of like viewed as ultimate betrayal, as she fears that her sisters would actually try to kill her now. So there is that. She's the one that, she was Klothos. Charlie was the sister named Klothos. She's the spinner, I believe, if my mythology is correct. So that was something there. She also explained that her true form is, she shapeshifts so much to the point that like her true form is not something that humans would be able to perceive and not be harmed in any way. If you want to think about it from like Supernatural. When it comes to the angels, they can never show their true form because it's going to be detrimental to any human who hears or sees their true form. So Charlie the way Charlie revealed her true form, it kind of reminded me of that. So there's that. With 506, the major reminder I would say is that first off, Ray and Nora got married. So that's a huge thing there, especially how it connects to 507, which I'll talk to in a moment. But a 506 takeaway to bring on is the fact that Damien Darhk revealed that the Encores can only return to Earth if they are to cause chaos and corruption. Failure to do so would result in them going back to hell for more torture. So with Damien Darhk, we see him using the Hell Sword from Genghis Khan to kill himself so that he is not brought back to hell for torture. He initially used his visit to Earth so that he could check up on Nora and see that she was doing okay. And instead of staying around to bring more chaos and destruction, he decided to kill himself and release his soul so that he doesn't endure the torture once again. So also there's that. Also, it was confirmed that this motion is what I was trying to bring up with Genghis Khan. Like, how could he be alive for 700 years trying to dig himself out of his own tomb? If he wasn't causing chaos and destruction, how was he still able to reach his release date? You know what I mean? But also we do see this, what Damien Darhk said about the Encores coming to fruition in 507, when we see the Marie Antoinette no longer being stuck behind her barrier. Like, she's no longer on the ship anymore. So because she was just sitting around eating cake by herself and not causing chaos and destruction like she originally was, she was sent back to hell. And also all the Rasputin jars from the season premiere, they were all empty now because his soul was recalled back to hell, which we see in 507. Now, in regards to 507, as I said, 506 had Ray and Nora getting married. 507 had them announcing that they were leaving the Wave Rider, and we see them doing all their goodbyes. Not essentially, we don't see Nora doing any goodbyes, but we do see Ray having all these very prominent, like, his whole mission is around him, it being the last and saying goodbyes and stuff like that. We do have him get a one-on-one goodbye with Sarah. We get a very intense one with him and Nate. And I was a little sad we didn't get like a good one between him and Mick, since again they were there from the beginning. So that was something there. Also, a takeaway for the episode is the fact that the Legends team acquired a piece of the loom, which was the ring that they were trying to get from William Shakespeare that Charlie had just left with him for safekeeping. And Charlie did say that using the loom ring will help them find the other pieces to the loom. She hasn't stated how many pieces there are. That would be very helpful, but just that there was multiples. So there's that. Moving on to the most shocking moment of the episode, I think I'd have to say the fact for 505 is the fact that Charlie is one of the three fates. I was both excited by that, but then also very sad because, like, I'm excited because I finally want to see that mythology on screen, but then I'm also very sad because as a screenwriting student, that is one mythology I wanted to play around with in one of my projects. So I'd have to be very careful now on what I do or how I portray it if I were to go forward with that idea. But I'm interested to see how the Arrowverse is going to spin it, because now they're including the Greek mythologies um, into the Arrowverse, which is the surprise. So there's that. For 506, I'd say the surprise for me has to be the fact that Mick has a daughter. It's definitely paralleling the storyline of Professor Stein having a daughter after messing around with his own past. Because we saw that when Mick went back to his old high school reunion in 503 with the whole prom night slasher. He went back to the reunion in 2004 when originally he was in prison at that time. So with him going there, he hooked up with his old girl, Allie, which resulted in her getting pregnant. But so for Allie, it's been 16 years since she's seen Mick, but for Mick, it's only been a few days since he's actually seen Allie. So that surprise leads him to fainting on the news. But it's definitely paralleling with Professor Stein in season 2, where he gave advice to his old self, and then later on find out that his advice led to him having a daughter. Again, Professor Stein himself didn't actually do the deed, but it was his past self catching up with those memories to him, where it's different with Mick, where it's actually him interacting with his past, and that resulted in him having a daughter. So it's a little kind of revisiting yet reinventing a previous storyline. So that was a shock there. For 507, the shock for me would have to be Ray and Nora deciding to leave the Wave Rider. I mean, it's not a surprise if you knew that Brandon and Courtney were leaving the show. Like, that's not a surprise. But then also, if you weren't aware of it, them leaving, as it seemed abruptly for me, the fact that them getting married already seemed very fast, and then to them, but leaving seemed like permanently seemed fast. Like, I thought they would go the honeymoon route that Nate originally thought was happening, so they'd be gone for a few episodes and then they come back maybe with the revelation of the fact that, okay, we need to leave and actually start our new life together. We took some thinking about it and stuff, so at least we had a little bit more opportunity for them to still be here for the season, to like maybe the very end, and then at the very end we'd see them leave. Like, I'm very glad that they weren't leaving the show because their characters were killed off. I'm very happy for that. But then at the same time, I feel like it seemed very abruptly, because then when you think about it, they filmed their goodbye episode in 507, but then Brandon Routh had to film 508, which was the crisis episodes, and he played both Ray and Clark Kent in that. So it was more of like him being those crisis roles was the last time he was going to be playing those characters, and like that was his send-off. So it's just like, I don't know, it was a huge surprise that it would, like, these would be the episodes where they would be leaving. I was expecting them more to be at the tail end of the season, if anything. So there's that. But yeah, it just felt rushed to me, because ever since Nora became the fairy godmother, we don't actually see them on screen a lot together. So it's like, I don't really see any of the growth or how her being the fairy godmother has changed her, or how it's changed their dynamic, because they're not with each other so often anymore. So it's just, yeah, that was a shock there. But let's move on to top favorite moments. Try to keep it down to my top 3. So with 505, let's talk about the fact that, first off, I love Charlie's speech about the fates, what they entail, how like her whole truth about it. I really appreciate that from what I remember. Another thing I liked was the fact that Constantine was spending his time with Ray and Gary and not being a jackass to them. So he was just actually allowing them in his final moments to be, allow them to be his friends, not just like associates or like coworkers and stuff like that. So I did appreciate that when he wasn't being a very mean dude, that he allowed for them to actually just allow for the moment to happen. I guess I don't know how to say it, but there's that. And then I really liked Nathan and Behrad talking in the car together. It was definitely advice on for Nathan to give to Behrad about how to handle Charlie's distant behavior towards him. And then we find out because she's a 3 fate and she's been running, so it makes sense. But I did like the moment that they kind of like took the time to address it and just like talk on an emotional level. And then to have their hostage kind of chime in was kind of funny too. And then they just disregarded him and then he got away. So that was something there. With 506, I'd have to say, I don't know why, but Damien Darhk was a huge favorite because it's just seeing the huge contrast between his very light side when he is addressing Nora versus very dark side when he's addressing every other Legends member when they're viewed as a threat to him, which is just something, it's just like a huge difference. And it's just one of those characters, or it's one of those actions where it's like you see him being good and trying to do it in the right way, yet it's like you also have done very awful things to the characters. So it's like, which way should I root? But I think he redeemed himself by his end, and like he finally, that Nora got the closure she needed without really knowing that would be the last time she'd see her father. So yeah, it definitely would not have seemed right if Nora were to leave the show before she ever got this moment with Damien Darhk. I think the whole idea of him coming in and actually being a prominent role and trying to get closure with not only her new place in life but her relationship as well, and actually giving it his acceptance to it. It definitely is. If they were to leave the show and not have this episode, I think it would have been more of like unanswered questions kind of thing. So there's that. I also really like the different support systems that we got in this episode. We got Ray, Nathan, and Behrad together, especially when they're trying to deal with the fact that Ray's proposal got derailed because of Damien Darhk crashing the party, and then how they're trying to be supportive and being open about like, do we need to talk this out? How do you feel? And then like trying to help each other out. The fact that they also helped them plan this elaborate proposal was pretty funny as well too. And then also then there was the support that Nora was getting from Sarah and Ava and Constantine as they try to help her keep this facade in front of Damien Darhk, as well as Gary too, and then trying to help her get her father's powers getting stripped away, and then like them still following along with it, even though this is a guy that they want to kill, and they're like having beef with him, and yet they won't because it is Nora's father, and she asked for just one night to kind of like deal with it her way. So I do appreciate that everybody was willing to like help her out, and then also when she realized that no, like one is enough, I have to claim my truth back. And I really love how she did it, how she explained that, like, no, I can't do this anymore. And then telling him, like, no, this is who I am. This is who I love. And it was my choice. Like, just the whole process of how Nora was able to get to that point with her father. I really like that. So that was something there. With 507, one favorite I did have was Zari's advice to Nathan when it came to saying goodbye to Ray. And which also led into Nathan's goodbye with Ray at the Wave Rider, which I really liked. And then, because also you could see like the emotional toll it was taking on Nathan when he was playing the role of Juliet at the time. So that was something there. I really liked Legends performing Romeo and Juliet. It was so crazy. But Zari and Constantine were really good playing Romeo and Juliet. And it just like, I could go for it. And then Mick playing his role, he just seemed like he was in his element. It's like he was just still being Mick and yet just saying lines instead of playing on this role of being a character. So it's just like, I don't know. Maybe it's because with Zari, Constantine, and Mick, I thought they were really good as their roles in the play because they didn't seem like they were playing specific roles. Like with Sarah, with Ava, and with Behrad, you could tell that they were trying to act out these characters a little bit more elaborately. Like you could tell that that's not how Sarah would normally act. But with Mick, Zari, and Constantine, they still played the roles as if it was still them. So it's just like, oh, that like fit them. So it's like I enjoyed that. So that was something there. And then another favorite I did have was just Mick and Mona. Mona came back. She hasn't been seen since the 501. But I really like the dynamic between them. How like Mick was showing doubt about knowing his daughter and keeping away so that his own, because he believed he wouldn't be a good father because his father wasn't good to him. And then Mona was contradicting that, saying like, no, I'm better off knowing you and having you in my life. And just like having him think about that, I really liked. And then the way that she addresses Mick and like tries to like, even when she's, instead of just going in for the hug, she asks him for permission to go and he gives it to her. So I really appreciate the dynamic between the two of them. I don't know why, but it works for them. So there's that. And the last favorite I did have for the episode was just the whole bathroom lineup routine that the Legends had. It's such a mundane thing, but at the same time, it's like, I'm glad they showed it, because it just further emphasized like, oh, there is really only one bathroom on the ship. They really do have to fight it over as if they're in a college dorm. And just to see how it's so routine for them, yet it's the first time we're seeing it, it's just something that I really liked. Again, even though it is a mundane thing, which they kind of put reason behind it, because that is where Ray and Nora announced to everybody that they were leaving. And then they added the tension, the fact that Nathan wasn't there when it was announced. He was kind of last to the party type of thing. But I do appreciate the whole setup of it there. So there's that. So let's move on to top peeved moments. First one for 505. I was kind of a little bummed when Nathan wasn't as excited for Ava's historical invention, the prognosticator. Like, Ray was excited, which is understandably so, because he's always optimistic about everything. But when Nathan showed that he was bored behind it, I was a little bummed, because as the historian of the team, shouldn't he be excited that Ava was able to create this device with Gideon that located historical inaccuracies and stuff? Like, I was expecting a different reaction from Nathan. Instead, he was more excited and focused on his motorized scooter, Scoot Magoots or something or whatever. But so like that was a peeve there, because it didn't sit right with me, and it does match up with a peeve I had in 507, which I'll talk about in a moment. But with 506, the peeve I had was the fact that Sarah and Ava were puppets in the Mr. Parker's Cul-De-Sac portion, and it was during this part when they're puppets, they decided to deal with the argument they had over Sarah's job offer in Star City. I just felt like as puppets, I couldn't take it very seriously, and it's definitely not a conversation I wanted to see them do as puppets. I wanted to see the real, like, their live action versions having that conversation and really talking about it or fighting over it. I just did not want to see it puppet wise. I get why they did it puppet wise, because like it was the only way to fit it into the Mr. Parker section and still have it fit with the theme of resolutions, conflict resolution. So I get that. I just did not like that, because I thought like that was an argument that they really needed to have talked about fully. And also I kind of tuned out interest-wise when it came to the puppets. I was like Constantine when he was like he was outraged that he was dealing with puppets again. Made sense, because last season he had to deal with the puppet changes in timelines and stuff. So there's that. Now with 507, the peeve that I had for Nathan was the fact that we got a little bit of Nathan being the historian once again, sharing it with Constantine, but then the peeve behind it is the fact that it was actually Charlie that was playing the historian Nathan, and wasn't actually Nathan giving these historical facts. And I'm finding that that part of Nathan is seeming to be less and less, unless it was like on mission and it's like in the moment that he provides it. But like I remember at the very beginning, he would just be spouting off these historical, like he'd be excited about history and everything. He'd include it everywhere. It's just now it seems like less and less of that part of Nathan is being shown up. And I'm a little disappointed in that. So there's that. And another peeve I did have was that during the scene where Sarah was reprimanding Ray, Charlie, and Nathan, they were all drunk, first off. So they were drunk, and they were like playing off the fact that they were drunk. So I get that, I understand that. But the peeve I had was the fact that moments later when Sarah takes Ray to the side and they're talking in her office, all of a sudden the mannerisms of drunk Sarah are completely gone. And like she's talking with Ray one-on-one as if they were both sober. But I see remnants of Ray still being drunk. But like with Sarah, it's like it's completely gone. And for me, as a peeve, it's just like there's no way someone who's acting so as drunk as they were just moments ago would just suddenly look like they're sober now. Like, it just didn't sit with me, and that's why it's a P, because I'm questioning the validity of that. So that's something there. But moving on to major tidbits. For 505, let's talk about that. There's really small ones. The fact that 505 actually is the one that Katie Lotz directed. So it's understandable that this is still the episode where she technically only had one scene, because she's directing the rest of it. So in 504, they set it up that Sarah wasn't going to be active on the mission to retrieve Marie Antoinette because she was needed in Star City. So then that continued into 505, where she was gone for the rest of the episode. And it was only at the very end that she was returning from Star City and making note of like the mess on the ship and then asking, well, what did I miss type of thing. That was her one scene in the episode. And then similarly, Mick had the same thing as well. He only had one scene in the episode as well too. And that was when he was babysitting Prince Charles while on his beer break. So that was something there. And then also this episode, we get the introduction of Ava's prognosticator, which appears again in 506 and 507. So we do get that. And then also we do get a kiss between Constantine and Gary when Constantine finds that he has survived his looming death date after striking a deal with Astra to find the Loom of Fate and bring her mother back so that it would change Astra's fate, because if her mother never died, then she would have never, what happened to her never would have happened, and what happened to her father never would have happened. So there's that. Although Astra does not know it's the Loom of Fate. She only finds out in 507 that it's the Loom of Fate he's after. So there's that. And in 506, it was revealed that, again, the job after that Sarah was fighting with Ava about, and there's the clock, was that Sarah was offered a job by Wild Dog, a.k.a. Renee Ramirez of Star City, who is now the mayor after Quentin Lance stepped down. What type of job it wasn't made clear. We just know that Sarah kept getting a call from caller ID Wild Dog, and it was only when Ava intercepted that she found out about the job offer. Originally, Sarah was thinking about the job because she thought Ava might want to settle down and have a normal life. But when Ava was telling her that, no, I like being on the ship, I like being in the field, it kind of told Sarah, like, okay, maybe I won't go for this job. So that is something there. Another tidbit for 506 was the fact that Nora tried and failed to strip her father of his powers in hopes that if he had no powers and he was just a human, then he wouldn't be a threat anymore and the legends would let him live. Not sure if doing so would renounce the hold that Hell had on him and him being recalled back, but we won't see it because he killed himself. So there's that. And another thing is the fact that we did see Zari do another hacking bit for Mick. Yet she claims that she's not a hacker, but she has been getting bits of flashes of her previous life that we've known her in season 3 and 4 as the hacker. But it's like forgotten memory, or it's like muscle memory for her, but she can't explain that. She can't explain that away. So that's something there. And then for 507, the major tidbit, like I mentioned before, is the fact that Rasputin's jars are now empty and Marie Antoinette is not on the Waverider anymore. They've both been recalled back to Hell. So that is something there. But let's move on to random questions very quickly. So with 505, I had the first question being, how did Nathan's motorized scooter not draw attention in 1997? Pretty sure that when I was a kid that those were not a thing yet. So that was a question there. Second question is, what happened to all the supernatural creatures from season 4? I mean, we saw the Puka again in the episode try to heal Constantine from his accelerated cancer. But then also as well in with Zari, she grew up in the media known as the Dragon Girl who was able to tame the dragon at Haywold. So it's like, if she still has that moniker of being the Dragon Girl, to the point that she had a perfume in 504 named Dragon Musk, or Dragonesque as a perfume, then where are the rest of the supernatural creatures? They can't just be all at Hayworld, or were they initially, or did the whole documentary or mockumentary kind of erase the idea that there were supernatural creatures? And also Mona herself is still a Kope. And I just realized now she didn't turn into her Cope alter in 504, or alter ego in 504 or 507. I just realized that, but that's a question there. Another question was, can Gideon track all the changes because of Crisis? I mean, over on the Flash in, what was it, 613 in the Grodd episode, Barry had that version of Gideon calculate how many changes were made because of Crisis, and it was 3.72 trillion, I think, changes. So I'm wondering if Legends' version of Gideon is able to track all the different changes in Crisis and actually catalog it. Another question for Gideon is the fact that, can she track the pieces of the loom? Can she do it now that they have a piece of it in 507? So that's something there. And the last question for 505 was, what's the difference between Constantine using the loom to save Astra's mother as opposed to just going back in time and saving her that way? We did get an answer in 507, and that was the fact that the loom can make changes that won't affect the timeline. I don't know how that's going to be possible, but we'll just have to wait and see about that. But I can see how that could be a lot of power to place in one person. So there's that. 506. The only question I did have was the fact that, how is Zari able to have remnants of her previous memories if Mia Smoke, Oliver Queen's daughter in Arrow, didn't experience the exact same thing? She needed help from Laurel, who had help from John Jones, with a device that allowed for them to also give Mia her pre-Crisis memories. So they needed that device. So I'm left wondering why Zari is still able to have her previous memories. I mean, her change wasn't caused because of Crisis. It was caused because of Hayworld, but it was still a change in who she was. So why does she still have those odd bits and pieces of memory of her previous self if Mia Smoke couldn't have the same thing done to her? So that's something there. Now, with 507, the questions I had were, 1, will Nora have an issue reclaiming her identity in the real world or will she need a new one since her 2020 self is still a teen? Because you got to remember, adult Nora is from the future. I can't remember which future she is, but because in the present day, her self is still a teenager who was taken in by the demon cult that was worshipping Mala. So, like, when Nora have an issue, like, how are they going to do this? And I'm assuming when they go back, they're going to take all of Ray's, like, Ray still has properties because he's still rich and everything with his inventions and stuff. So I'm assuming he would still have property somewhere and they would just go there somewhere. But how is Nora's identity going to be an issue or not? Another question, it's kind of more of a statement, but does anyone else have a suspicion that that coin maker that Astra keeps going to, is it possible that she could be one of Charlie's sisters, one of the Fate sisters? I don't know. I don't know if it's because, like, I can't tell if her interest in the loom was because it's a powerful artifact and, like, anybody would want that, or if it's because she has an invested interest in finding the loom because she's one of the sisters. So that's one prediction and question for you there. Another question I did have was, does anyone else see a possibility of something happening between Charlie and Zari based off that bathroom exchange in 507, or between Zari and Constantine based off their acting as Romeo and Juliet together in 507? I mean, I could see it both ways. I mean, Charlie has been making a few passes, I think, at Zari since she's met her, or this version of her. I'm pretty sure they've also shared some exchanges in the previous season as well, too. But I don't know. I definitely see it more with Charlie Zari and Charlie Constantine than I do with Zari and Nathan, for sure, I think, sadly to say that. Or this version, at least. I definitely like the version of previous Zari with Nathan. But yeah, I don't know. Another question. Where was Gary during this whole Romeo and Juliet mission? I mean, I wouldn't have thought much of Gary's absence if Constantine wasn't part of the mission, but he was part of the mission. So I'm left wondering, well, where was Gary then? Was he still at Constantine's house, like, keeping watch? He wasn't on the Wave Rider, so, like, where was he? Another question. What did you think about Ray and Nora's exit? Do you think it was rushed? Do you think it fit with the projection that they were going? They rushed into a marriage, so yeah, they're going to rush to leave. Or would you have preferred to have it at least like spanned out and kind of like breadcrumbs left, and like maybe later on in the season have them leave? And another question is, do you think there'll be a new scientist on the Legends team to replace what Rey offered as a team member? I mean, in one way, I kind of hope so, but then on the other hand, there's no way anyone could replace Rey, so it'll be very tricky. But they definitely need to recruit again, for sure. And then my last question. It's not pertaining to any episode in particular, but because we are now technically halfway through this season, roughly, with we've seen 8 episodes of Legends so far, I'm left wondering when are we supposed to see Sarah's new power? Because they kept on advertising it in the interviews and spoilers before the season started that Sarah was going to be coming into her new powers, but we haven't seen any inkling of it. We haven't seen any clues put in place that she was developing anything of the sort. So I'm wondering when is it supposed to play a part? So that's pretty much it. So what did you guys think of the episodes? What did you guys like about it? What do you think will happen next? Let me know in the comments down below. Love to hear your own thoughts, theories, and opinions about these 3 episodes. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check my other videos if you haven't done so already. If you want, check out my Tumblr page. Link for that is down below. I read blog promos, web clips, quotes, GIFs, synopses, news, all that good stuff, all found in one place. Go check that out. I am behind. I do have to catch up on that. I plan to during this isolation time. So just keep that in mind. Also, WordPress, same thing goes. Link down below. Anything I post online is connected to WordPress. It's a little more organized, a little more detailed, but still a work in progress. I do have to get back to updating that as well. But otherwise, guys, that is pretty much it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your patience. I hope you come back and see what I have to say about the next episode. I think I'll be covering it if it's still during this quarantine time, or it depends if it interferes with my schoolwork. But yeah, otherwise, I hope you come back and check out what other episodes I've talked about on my channel. But until then, guys, this is Mel. Wish you all a great day, great week wherever you are. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay physically distant, but that does not mean you can't call up somebody if you're feeling like you need some socializing. So just be mindful of that. The sooner we button down on trying to minimize the spread, the sooner we can get to going back to our regular lives. So just keep that in mind, guys. But yeah, so take care, guys. Bye.